let's talk about connection first, because that's your most important C. And wearing our parenting hats and wearing our need to support parents through the trauma of their kids becoming adolescents, let's understand what's happening during adolescence. So I want you to imagine every developmental milestone as if a kid is crossing a chasm. And the chasm is 12 feet across, it's 100 feet deep, there are rusty metal spikes, and there are alligators on the bottom. How do I get to the other side? How do I get there? I jump from where? If I jump from here and it's 12 feet in, where do I land? I fall in the middle. So what do? I go backwards. I take a flying leap, cover my eyes, and hope to get to the other side. All right? And this is the way it's always been, not just adolescence. So, remember, for those of you who are parents, remember when your kid was like 10 or 11 months old and she took her first step and she got up and what was the next thing that she did? She fell, right? And then you went to pick her up and she wanted to say, gosh, Mom, thank you so much because these legs are kind of wobbly. I appreciate the support. But what did she do? Push you away. And then she was 2 years old, and she had all those two-word sentences, but she wanted to express herself in so many different ways, and you know, she was so smart, and she just couldn't get it out with words. I don't mean smart like other mothers thought their child was smart. Like, your kid really was smart. So what happened is, you finished her sentences for her, and when you finished her sentences for her, she wanted to say, gosh, Mom, thank you so much, because I'm having articulation difficulties. But what did she say instead? No, me! And then she goes on her first date, right? And you decide to have the talk with her, right? Way too late, by the way, okay? And what she wants to say is, gosh, Dad, thank you so much, because there's nobody I would rather learn about healthy male sexuality from than you. But what does she say instead? Ew! Has anybody had a kid go to college yet? All right, that last summer is so special. It's the time when you have those like mother-son dates and you like really talk to them about feelings and make sure that they understand. Like, does he know not to put a fork in the toaster? Right, you just like run by it all. But when you ask to have this date, what does he say? He says like, are you kidding? I'm not going to see Sheila for like 3 months. And then right before he goes to college, he wants to say, Mom, Dad, thank you so much. You've prepared me. You've changed me in so many ways. Do you think I'm ready for the academic pressures, the social pressures, the emotional pressures, even the sexual pressures? Can I call you 5, 6, or at least text you 10 times a day? But what does he say on the way out of the door? Out of this prison! What's happening? Every developmental milestone is like crossing a chasm. It is terrifying. The largest developmental challenge of your lifetime is, God willing that you haven't been abused in your home, is leaving your home, a place that is comfortable. It's insanity. It is such a large risk that the only way you are going to be able to prepare yourself for that risk is if you take little smaller risks earlier. So what happens? During early childhood, you're in this nest, and the nest is incredibly comfortable. You change seats. Your nest is incredibly comfortable. And it's like warm, and it's cozy, and it's got feathers, and these birds that are these beautiful birds that come and they feed you big, juicy worms whenever you need them. They seem to anticipate your every need. It's fantastic. And then you're about 10 or 11 years old, and then something in your brain clicks. It's called your pineal gland. And your pineal gland goes off, and it says that adolescence is coming. And when it says that adolescence is coming, suddenly you know that you're going to have to fly from the nest. This is insanity, and you have only a few years to prepare. So suddenly you have to begin seeing that nest differently. It's no longer all comfortable and cozy. In fact, it's very prickly. And those birds that bring you those big, fat, juicy worms, you actually don't like the way they look, and you're embarrassed by the way they breathe. And then, as adolescence continues, think senior year of high school, you suddenly begin realizing you really do need to leave the nest. And when you realize that you really do need to leave the nest, then that nest becomes uninhabitable. You couldn't take one more minute in it. And if it doesn't happen, you'll never fly. So what we have to help our parents understand is that kids hate us because of how intensely they love us, right? That is critical because parents are falling apart. And as long as we continue to have a negative view of teenagers, which, by the way, I'm working on in a very large way starting in a year, but I can't tell you much more. But as long as we continue to have a negative perception of teenagers, then we will always have parents scared of what teenagers are going to become. When we have them understand that it's that they love us so intensely, they can handle almost anything. Next, what do we need to tell parents? And I would argue that this stuff is relevant in a school setting as well. We have to teach them that kids hate drama. Kids like to be listened to. They don't like people handing them solutions. So what are some basic things I teach parents? The first is turn off your parent alarm. Your parent alarm goes like this. Mom, I met this girl. You're too young to date. Mom, my friend Bill, he's using drugs, which is why I told you never to hang out with him again, ever. Now what we have is a situation where that kid will never come back to you and talk about sex or drugs, right? Another thing that we do is we catastrophize. Mom, I got a C- on a test. It's not my fault at all. It's Mr. Kuhn's fault. You know what? He doesn't like me. He never liked me. And you know what? Well, you know what? I don't blame you. He didn't like you. I'm going to the principal. I'm going to get him fired. And if I need to, we'll move. And another thing that we do is we over-empathize. Mom, I had this really big fight with Lisa, and you know, she was my best friend ever, and we grew up together. You know that because she's practically lived in this house, and I thought it was going to last forever. We were going to live in the same neighborhood, maybe marry brothers, and her kids were going to call me Aunt, and my kids were going to call her Aunt, and we were going to be best friends forever and ever, and I just really hate her now, and I don't want to ever see her, and I don't want to ever even talk to her ever again. I don't blame you, darling. She's a little bitch, and I don't like her mother. Who is Lisa the next day? It's her best friend. But you'll never know because we have reacted instead of listened. This is true in the classroom as well. Because don't forget, we are reparenting kids. You are seeing some of the kids more hours of the day than the parents do. And when you react, kids stop talking. Boundaries. Why do we talk about boundaries during connection? Because if this day is meaningful, this is the beginning, not the end. If this day is meaningful, Curtis, you will be better prepared for your changing demographic as the school district thinks about it. This is going to be the beginning of training, which isn't going to come from me, it's going to come from you, from within you as you seriously think, how is it that we can support kids so that they're ready to learn in a different way than we have? And what this means is you're going to get exposed to pain that you're already being exposed to, but now you're going to see it more. And if you're going to see it more and be more acutely aware of it, then you have to figure out how to protect yourself. Because if you don't have appropriate boundaries, it's not going to be safe for you, and it's not going to be safe for the kids, and it's not going to be a healthy connection. So we've actually been talking about it all day. Let's review. Knowing where your buttons are is what gives you healthy boundaries. If you don't know where your buttons are, you're not going to know why you don't like certain kids, why certain kids grab you, why certain kids make you tortured. Okay? Next, you got to get rid of the rescue fantasy. Do not believe you're going to see things throughout your school years, you already have, for those of you who are seasoned, that are devastating to you. What you can't believe is that it's about you. Let me tell you, I am now in charge of international training for Covenant House. We have 24 international sites that serves homeless and street kids. I was, however, and I've been working with Covenant House for more than 30 years. At the end of residency, I was supposed to become the doctor in New York after having spent a certain amount of time there already. It was the plum homeless job in America, but don't be impressed because no one else was applying, right? And so what happened is there was a scandal and I ended up losing my job. The scandal wasn't about me. It was much bigger than me and we lost funding. And it's really a pity because if I had gone there, I think I would have been amazing. I was 27 years old. Remember I reached puberty late. I still looked like I was about 19. I related to these kids intensely. I already had 3 years of experience working with street kids in New York. I knew how to dress like them. I knew how to talk to them. During medical school, had food insecurity myself, so I, on some level, related. Kids knew how much I cared. I would tap a vein for them virtually to let them know how deeply I cared about them and loved them and believed in their potential to change, and would invite them as best I could to join with me so that they would change. So I lost that job, as most people at Covenant House lost their jobs at that point, and that's why I went into academic medicine. Had I done that job or taken it then, how long would I have been the best street doc in New York? I don't think I would have made it 5 years. Honestly, I think a year. All right? What word did I use way too much in my description of me at 27? I. There was way too much I in my life. Way too much. I was sincere, but I really didn't understand something very basic, which is that people are experts in their own lives and I'm only a facilitator. I didn't get it. And furthermore, when you tap a vein for a human being, what happens? You run out of blood, and then you're not able to serve people over the long term. It is not healing for another human being for me to have a rescue fantasy that I am their savior. That is oppressive, it's racist, it's classist, it's whatever it is. But that because of my place of privilege, I believe I can change your life. We begin by applying our principles and understanding that that kid is the expert in their own lives. Because love without boundaries isn't safe for anybody, especially kids who've been exploited. You know, we're going to talk about the word love a lot today. I want you to know that the word love makes people uncomfortable because we speak English. And the word love, when I say I love you, it could mean some sexual stuff as well, which is crossing boundaries, which means that you're probably not going to use the word love with kids as long as you're speaking English. But let's be clear. What I'm talking about is the loving kindness between human beings. And if you put it in a religious context, this is agape in Greek, this is Christian liturgy, this is chesed in Hebrew, this is mechaba in Arabic. Right? So this is the kind of love we're talking about, but it's still not safe without boundaries. And then the next question is, how much can you give every person? You cannot be a teacher, run a classroom, and give this kid your lifeblood. That is why we have systems in place like the Students Assistance Team. So that your role as a teacher is not, even the kid who needs you the most, might be the kid who actually doesn't get the most from you. The kid who needs you the most might be the kid who you know how, and if you do Reaching Teens, you'll learn how to do this, how to refer without shame or stigma to the next person who knows how to do it. Your role might be to recognize, get that kid to understand that it's not that they need help, it's that they deserve to be happier. You'll have the right kind of language to get the people who can dive in. So everybody has their role, and I don't want you for a minute to think you're supposed to do it all. Because if you do believe that, nothing will happen, because it's going to be too overwhelming. All right? Being trauma-informed really helps us with boundaries, because I know what's about me and what's not about me. Next, I have to have experiences that what I do matters. All right? I have to learn what kind of experiences are high yield. What kind of interactions are going to make a difference? And the answer is those experiences that facilitate another human being to make wise decisions. Those experiences that return control to the human being. And when you know that, it sets you up to have healthy boundaries. Is that something bad? It's not, okay. All right, so we're going to talk about these kind of techniques that make a difference. So again, who's the expert? The kids. Who's the facilitator? You. We're going to talk about turning off the lecture and talking to kids in another way and restoring control to the person who needs it. All the stuff that I'm about to teach is completely related to giving you skills and boundaries at the same time. All right?